everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello. My name is Lern the Conjurer, and I am your host of all things spooky, creepy, weird, and fun. And today, could you tell that I was very blue missing you? Sometimes I'm funny. Just a little bit. Only sometimes. I am so excited to be back, and thanks so much for all of the new Ghosties and Ghoulies and all of my oldies sticking around with me, because, you know, lately, since it's kind of been okay to, you know, go outside the crypt, I've been spending a lot of much needed time with friends and family. So thank you so much to everyone who's stuck with me and has also joined me on some recent lives that you can find here and also here, I think. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction. I never know if I'm pointing in the right direction. Anyway, you found yourself to my series called Conjuring Canvases, the show where spooky art is created and terrifying tales are told. And today we are covering a very special subject that is near and dear to my cold, chilly heart. Not sure if you could guess from my little get-up going on here, but today's topic for Conjuring Canvases is mermaids. Yay! I thought this would be a really fun topic to come back to, so I hope that you all enjoy. Also, please just excuse this makeup. I tried to make myself look like I was coming out of the water and look ethereal. I don't think I got that. So, sorry if this is hard for you to watch. I haven't mentioned this in a while, but I'd like to let everyone know that the original inspiration for Conjuring Canvases came from Robert Welsh's Ghost Stories and Makeup Mondays. I highly recommend you checking out his channel if you haven't already. He's wonderful and just an amazing makeup artist, unlike myself. And he has a segment where he does ghost stories and makeup. And it's some really creepy stuff, you guys. If you're liking my channel, I pretty much guarantee you'll love his. Oh, and Zed in his office over yonder has requested me to remind all of you that if you have a spooky story that you would like me to share one day on one of my videos, feel free to email it to conjuringcanvases@gmail.com. All right, I got the paints laid out, so let's talk all about mermaids. So let's start out with, what is a mermaid? Well, I'll tell ya. In folklore, mermaids tend to be aquatic creatures which are usually found as half woman, half fish. Now, half woman being from the head to the torso, and then from the lower half being a fish. Listen, I know that you're probably wondering if there are mermen. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Mermaids have appeared in folklore for quite a long time, and actually worldwide. Stories of mermaids have originated from Europe, Asia, and even Africa. Probably the most common mermaid tale is the one that everyone knows from Disney, which y'all know I'm not sampling that. I'm not about to be copyright struck. Now, second to that is what we all know the Disney's Little Mermaid was based off of, which is Hans Christian Andersen's version of The Little Mermaid. Now listen, everybody, if you haven't heard that tale before, let me give you the highlights, because it's not at all what we saw as kids. Not at all. Pretty terrible, actually. In Mr. Andersen's version, the Little Mermaid did indeed want to be on land. You know, the whole "Daddy, I love him" thing wasn't really enough to get her onto land, even though she was in love with a prince. She saves this prince from a storm, so far it's sounding a lot like what we know, and decides she's gonna be with this prince. She's gonna. Nothing's gonna stop her. So she meets a sea witch, right? Everybody was still with me, right? So she meets this sea witch, and the sea witch is like, "Yeah, girl, I'll help you out, but I'm gonna need something from you." And of course, the Little Mermaid's like, "Of course, anything. I just want to be on land." Girl, if nothing else, this story also taught you to always read between the lines in a contract situation, right? Right. So the sea witch's demands were that the Little Mermaid had to give her, not her voice, her tongue. Okay, everyone still with me? So the sea witch cuts out the Little Mermaid's tongue. Cuts it out. Cuts it out. Cuts it out completely. Just guts it. And in return, the Little Mermaid gets legs. The condition is that she must have the prince marry her in 3 days. Also still following what we know. In 3 days' time, Little Mermaid isn't really getting lucky because, as it so happens, another princess comes on into the game, right? She's like, hi, hello, good day, I'm just an innocent princess. I didn't mean to bother anyone in this situation, but I'm about to fuck shit up. Before all this was going on, the prince was really falling in love with our heroine. And it was largely because she had the same eyes as the woman who saved him when he got into a shipwreck. And that's the whole reason why she's in love with him. That's the whole reason why... That's so stupid. Just so happens that this princess who just wanders on into this kingdom also happens to have the same color eyes as the Little Mermaid. Who would have thought? So the prince is like, oh my gosh, I finally found you, because the whole time he can't talk to the Little Mermaid because she doesn't have a tongue. I'm sorry, this is getting really intense. I apologize. I'm gonna bring it back. It's the last night, and the prince is gonna marry this other girl that came in that's not our heroine, right? Everyone's freaking out. Everyone's freaking out. What's gonna happen? Because obviously the sea witch is gonna kill the Little Mermaid. It's obvious, right? So you see, the Little Mermaid did indeed have 7 other sisters. So her sisters went to the sea witch and decided that they were going to offer up a trade. Yes, a trade. Now you're probably wondering, did they give their tongues too? My dog is here. Right when the story's turning pivotal. Ma'am. So what do they offer as a trade? Well, they decided that they would give the sea witch all of their hair, which, you know, as a mermaid, that's basically everything you have. So then the sea witch, in return, gave them a dagger with instructions, said that the Little Mermaid is to stab the prince in the heart that night. By doing so, she would then bathe in his blood, and with the blood being spilled all over her, she would turn back into a mermaid. Real cute, right? She only has until the sun rises the next day. If she doesn't do it by sunrise, she turns into sea foam and thus dies. So obviously she walks into the room where he's sleeping with this brand new girl that he's probably gonna end up marrying. It's a whole thing. And she walks right up to his sleeping body with the dagger in her hand. And at the last minute, she doesn't do it. Why? Because she loves him too much. This is when love really does kill. Perfectly timed. So in the end, the Little Mermaid walks to the bow of the ship that they're all staying on, jumps to the top, and turns into sea foam as the sun rises. Really freaking tragic, right? I had a VHS of that exact version of The Little Mermaid that my mother gave me, thinking, oh, it's about mermaids, totally innocent. Well, Ghosties and Ghoulies, it really freaking wasn't. But if you can believe that, mermaids actually go back even further than Christian Andersen's version. One of the earliest legends that has to do with mermaids, and might be the first documented version of a mermaid, takes us all the way back to a legend from Syria in about 1000 BC. In the legend, the goddess Atargatis, which I might be mispronouncing that wrong because I'm really bad at pronouncing things. No matter how much I practice and no matter how much Google tells me this is how you say this word, I'm bad at it. So I apologize if I just said that wrong, because I probably most likely did. So this goddess, she accidentally murders her human lover. You know, like you do. She murders him, and in shame, she decides she's going to transform into a fish, right? Right. Well, the gods that she was living with were like, oh no, she's way too pretty. We can't have her turn into a fish. So the gods cursed her to forever have her beauty. So she would only have the bottom half of her body turn into a fish, while the rest of her body was her. And if that just doesn't tell you back in 1000 BC that women needed to fuck the patriarchy, you know, like I just can't. Moving further from that, we take it to Africa, where there's a water spirit called Mamiwata, which I hope I pronounced that right because I really practiced that one. Mamiwata is a water spirit that typically is female, but can also be male. There you go. Equal opportunity there. Now, it's from my understanding that most villages and most village people who still worship Mamiwata treat Mamiwata as a vengeful spirit, but also could be very rewarding and very giving. So Mamiwata can punish or give to the people of a village. Typically, Mamiwata is half of a humanistic type of sprite, while the other half is usually a fish. Now, usually when African fishermen go fishing and they don't come back, several of the believers of the village will believe that Mamiwata decided to punish them and therefore drown them. Now, in British lore, though often kindly, mermaids were sometimes noted to be, well, kind of bringers of destruction and bad luck and a lot of bad stuff. Kindly bit is usually because mermaids would offer treasure to sailors who would pass them by. But most times this treasure was cursed. Kind of not very surprising when you think about the context of a situation, but I digress. Most commonly, mermaids or sirens as an interchangeable word, which actually is different, I'll get into that later. Mermaids were known to sing a seductive song in order to drown sailors. Because what they would do is they would sing songs to them and convince them that they can follow them and live with them underwater. And it would seduce the sailors so much that they would drown them. Mermaids were also known to cause things such as shipwrecks or horrible storms, or basically really anything that was meant to just ruin your day at sea. In 1493, Christopher Columbus, who was a horrible human, while sailing off the coast of what is now called the Dominican Republic, spotted what he claimed were mermaids. What they actually were was manatees. I love manatees. They're just so cute, and they look so happy, and they're so fat, and I just want to love it, and I want to squeeze it, and I want to tell how much I love it, and I want to keep it in a bowl. That's big enough for it. No, I don't want to keep it in anything. No, don't keep wild animals. Don't do that. Don't Tiger King that bitch. When Christopher Columbus came back to land, he decided to document his sighting by saying they were not half as beautiful as they were painted. That's just mean. I love manatees. Why? You know what? He already was awful, but now he's even worse because he's attacking the poor baby manatees that didn't ask for nothing. Save the manatees. If I had a sponsorship for manatee salvation or, recovery for those that get injured from boats, I would happily give money to that. Maybe one day. In Trinidad, there were actual documented cases of people seeing mermen. So here we are again, the boys are coming. These mermen would encounter fishermen and offer up to grant a wish. And usually it was wishes that had to do with changing mediocrity into genius and offering great wealth and knowledge and, all sorts of really elaborate and wonderful things to normal folk like you and I. I couldn't necessarily find if maybe they had to offer up something in return. I'm sure they did, but I did find that that was quite interesting. Now in Haiti, there's also a legend of an entity called Wasiarn, I believe is how it's pronounced. Again, I'm only doing my best here, sorry. Wasiarn is one of 3 powerful water spirits that roll over the waters near Haiti, and it is said that she is a combination of the two other water spirits, which one of them is supposed to be kindly and sweet and forgiving, while the other is powerful and kind of like a tyrant and has a yearning to destroy humans. Look at this water. This is some nice water. I hope I'm calming you down. Look at the canvas, Lern. Look at the canvas. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about sirens, because a lot of people interchange the word mermaid and sirens, as in they're the same thing, but they're actually quite different. In Greek mythology, sirens were women. However, they were half human and half bird. They usually had the head of a woman and the body of a bird. They were pretty deadly, like real scary, and they were known to screech so loud that it would make your ears bleed. Well, that and this, not entirely related. So the next time someone's talking to you about sirens and referring to mermaids, you can go ahead and give that little tidbit back, but be nice about it. Don't be a dick. So who decided to make the mermaids whimsical? A lot of people would claim that Europe was responsible for that, making them like creatures that wanted to interact with humans and had more of like a romantic spin on them instead of this entity that ruled over water or was kind of scary. That's another thing too. They tried to make it so that it was a scary entity that at first seemed innocent. Now I'll stop the history for just a moment to let you all know that I loved mermaids so much growing up that I wanted to be one, and I actually, when I became an adult, invested in a mermaid tail and became a mermaid for a little while. It was a fun time. Not gonna lie. And I got a hell of a workout with that thing, let me tell you. Now that we know all about the legend and the myth behind mermaids, I'd like to confirm what all of you are probably wondering. If there is actual scientific evidence of mermaids in the ocean. Well, I'm very sorry to report, unfortunately, there has been no scientific evidence to prove that mermaids ever even existed. I would like to offer one food for thought, though. Over 80% of our oceans are unmapped, unexplored, and unobserved. Listen, can I get real with you for a minute? I am terrified of the ocean. If there's one thing that I am extremely terrified of in this life, it is the ocean. Yeah, okay, demons are scary. Yeah, okay, I'd probably be a little scared if a murderer showed up, right? I think you would be too. The deep sea, we have no idea what's in there. Not a clue. We have some idea from what we have been able to pick up, but our technology simply isn't strong enough to know. Or maybe they know something and they just don't want to say anything. Think about it this way. We know more about space than we do our own oceans on this planet. It's got to tell you something, right? Listen, you want real nightmare fuel? Go ahead and Google deep sea creatures and get back to me. So now that we've talked all about mermaids and how they possibly could actually still be in the ocean because we don't know all of the ocean and what it holds, I want to preface something about the stories that I found. So actually I found quite a few mermaid encounter stories. Thing is that when I was finding them, I either found them to be too short or not enough evidence or just not enough to make us feel like we could really think about something. That being said, these two stories that I found are quite interesting, though I cannot guarantee, obviously, if they're factual or not. I figured either way they'd be a fun listen, so let's have some fun, listen to some stories, and I'm gonna hurry up and painting this because I feel like I'm always behind with you guys. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll probably do some detailing before, but let's get in to story number 1.
This story comes to us from Redditor John QK. I've always loved going to the beach, but I've never been a big fan of swimming. I'm a decent swimmer, but I get a little scared of the water. I grew up on Lake Michigan, and back when I was in school, we'd pretty much spend every night out on the beach or in the dunes. I was always the designated clothing watcher because, unlike everyone else, I was too chicken to jump off the pier. My preference for staying out probably stemmed from a few close calls when I was little, but it wasn't helped by the fact that there are scary sounding riptides, and a couple dozen people would end up drowning each year. Fast forward several years, and I still love going to the beach. I'll take my shoes off and enjoy the cool water up to my ankles or knees. Lake Michigan is the best because it's cold, but you get used to it quick, and it's really usually very clean. I'll spend my hours just walking up along the shore, collecting rocks and beach glass in my little bucket, and enjoying the peace and quiet. I keep away from the busy beaches and prefer to walk along the empty stretches next door. So a few weeks ago, I'm going on one of these little strolls. I found a few pretty rocks, and I'm starting to decide to turn around to head back, when I hear someone screaming, "Help!" Naturally, I take off running in that direction, and eventually I come out to see a woman about 50 yards away. "Help! Help!" she's screaming. She's waving her arms in the air, and every now and then she'll bob below the water and then pop back up, crying for help again. Like any decent person would do, I ripped off my sandals and I started running into the water into her direction. But only a few steps in, I stopped. I remembered that you're not supposed to go into the water to save a drowning person. It's dangerous because they can grab and cling and end up pushing you under the water, and then it ends up making the situation worse. I felt like the biggest jerk in the world, but I couldn't go in there to help her, and I was secretly a little relieved. "I'm going to call for help," I shouted back. I took up my phone and called 911 as I walked back to the sand. I told them that there was a woman in the water calling for help, and I told them where I was and where the nearest access road was. The lady just kept calling for help and bobbing underwater, and I can't tell you just how awful I felt standing there and doing nothing but watching her. It probably took them 20 minutes to make it there, but near the end, I actually kind of sort of started to get a little bored. The woman out there was screaming for help, but it didn't really change. She never slipped under the water for too long, and she wasn't moving from her current position like she would have as she was stuck in a riptide. She kept repeating, "Help!" in the same way. First a loud and short help, and then a longer and slower, "Help me!" And then she'd bob under the water for a second, and then the whole thing would repeat. Her arms even seemed to be waving the same exact way. Have you ever watched a video clip online for a minute and then you go back and check how long is left, only to notice that you've been watching a 10-second loop? It was just like that. Finally, about 5 volunteer firemen came running down the beach. I called to them, but it wasn't necessary because they heard the woman's cries for help as well. By the time they made it to their hips, the woman had gone underwater one last time and had never come back up. They still swam out to look for her, but they couldn't find her. I was told that I was free to leave, and I went home feeling like the worst person in the world. Some woman had been begging for my help for almost a half an hour, and I just stood there like an idiot and I let her down. I heard on the news the next day that one of the firemen had actually gone missing and was presumed drowned during the search. I beat myself up for several weeks after that. I didn't go back out to my usual walking spot until just last weekend. That's when things got weird. I couldn't bring myself to go back to the same beach, so I wanted to go back out there, but I just wanted to go to a different one a few miles down the road. It was about an hour in when I heard the same cry for help. I couldn't believe what was happening. I took off running towards the sand and fumbled my phone out of my pocket in preparation. Maybe if I called sooner, they'd get here sooner, and then it would all turn out different. I saw her. She was still a good 50 yards out, but it was her. It was the same woman. She was shouting the same two cries for help. She was bobbing under the water and waving her arms in the same way. I was stunned. And then so was she. She just stopped mid-scream and stared at me. And I stared at her. It felt like it went on forever, but it was probably only 10 seconds. "Come on, big guy," she broke the silence by calling back. There was no distress in her voice, and she was practically cooing with flirtation. She wasn't moving her arms in a panic, and she was slowly and sensually waving them like she was beckoning me. "I'm getting lonely. Let's take a dip." She was pretty far out, but I'm pretty sure that she slipped off her bikini top and made a show of it by dropping it into the water next to her. That was weird, right? I was blown away. Having seen this lady drown a few weeks before and then seeing her again, and then this abrupt change in her tone really threw me for a loop. I just stood there for a few seconds trying to process what was going on. "Come on, big guy, I'm getting lonely. Let's take a dip." She said it again. Now look, I'm not an idiot, but I'm not a big fan of this water. If my hot classmates in high school couldn't get me in the water as a horny teenager, some random chick wasn't getting me in the water as a fat, middle-aged married guy. This lady wasn't in trouble, and my lingering guilt was gone, and I sure as heck wasn't going to go in there by myself to get in trouble by chasing a topless woman. It was time to go home. I turned around, but was a little surprised that I had apparently already walked into the water up to my knees. I trudged back up to the sand. "Come on, big guy, I'm getting lonely. Let's take a dip." I gave the woman a friendly wave, and I started the walk back. Since that evening, I haven't been able to get that woman out of my head. It's not every day that someone flirts with you so blatantly, you know? Besides the guilt I felt about not being able to save her, I now was consumed by the thought of what did I miss by being able to take a dip with her. I bounced back and forth between fantasizing about what it would have been like and feeling kind of guilty about those fantasies. Maybe I'm missing out on something amazing. I've made up my mind. I'm going to leave it up to fate. Tomorrow is Saturday, and I'm going out for another walk in the same spot. And if she's there, I'm going to swim out there and talk to her.
So you see what I mean? Amazing story. But I don't know. I think it's probably fake. Obviously, I have everything that I reference down below in the description. And of course, I will have both stories linked down below so you can take a look at them. I did try to look and see if there was an update, but there wasn't. So either it's a fake story, which it more than likely is, or somebody call that guy, make sure he's okay. Our last story, just as I said, I'm thinking it's probably fake, but the actual story itself gave me the chills. So I hope that you enjoy it.
This story comes to us from Redditor A. Morgan 1013. I met a mermaid when I was 9 years old. Well, met is the wrong word to use. I saw a mermaid when I was 9. We never spoke, but she was my friend. Sometimes she would wave to me when I was out on the water. Other times she would just stick her head out and smile. I didn't have many friends at 9. Your usual situation. A quiet girl with a mousy appearance that would rather read a book than have makeover sleepovers. However, my quality of life didn't suffer because of this. If anything, in my mind at any time, my life was far better than those of my peers. I got to live the lives of characters that I loved the most whenever I opened a book. So why would I care about a stupid sleepover when I could just step into a mystical castle in England with a mere flip of a page? Admittedly, I did get a little caught up from time to time with my ranting and raving about magical worlds and creatures that would slip from the pages into my reality. So it was no surprise that when I told my mother about this mermaid, she rolled her eyes and shook her head at me, sending a quick shot of cold through me, a feeling that came to me knowing that she was rejecting my idea, leaving me embarrassed, with a need to prove that what I was saying was true. Well, come on, Mom. I saw it. I know I did. That's what you said when you said that you saw a dragonfly over our house last Tuesday. She was right. I had made that up. I thought I saw a dragon, but quickly realized it was just a cloud. But that didn't stop me from immediately telling my mom all about it. Today was different, though. Today we were at my grandmother's house on the beach. There was something about that place that enhanced my imagination. Maybe because we were right on the water and the air always smelled of things that I'd never smelled before. Earlier that day, I'd gone out on the boat with my grandma for a few hours, and we were about 30 minutes west of the dock when I saw her. She was exactly how I pictured mermaids. Blonde, smooth skin, smiling, bright blue eyes. She bobbed up and down in the water. And then she was grinning at me. Her arm raised up in a quick wave, and I remember my heart stopping, having to make an effort to hold in my yelps and glee so that I didn't scare my grandmother. By the time I could tell my mom, I was ready to burst. So it was extra disappointing when she shot me down, like she had did. I didn't bother pushing it with my mom anymore that night, so I decided to turn around and go to bed, knowing I'd just have to show her the mermaid in the morning. Sure enough, the next day, she was there. I looked over at the front of the boat and squealed when I saw her, peering out from behind the same rocks as the day before. I darted to the back and grabbed my mom, yelling nonsense about how she was wrong and I was going to be right for once. In the 5 seconds it took me to get her to the front of the boat, the mermaid had disappeared. My face fell. I looked at my mother, the beginnings of disbelief on my tongue. But before I could say anything, she just smiled, shook her head, and walked back to the far end of the boat. I didn't understand. She'd been there a second ago, so where was she now? I was determined to see her again. I sought her out for 4 more days, until finally I was ready to give up. It was my last day at the beach, and I was ready to decide that I had made her up in my head when my grandmother offered one last boat ride before I went home. I agreed, not thinking I would see this mermaid, but just to be on the water one last time. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw her, just as I saw her the other 2 times, floating idly by the rocks. She looked a little different this time, though. Her hair looked whiter than before. Her eyes had become completely blue from end to end. Her smile seemed weighed down. The skin around it looked gray, but it could have been a trick of the light on the water. She raised her arm in a bit half-hearted wave, and I did the same, smiling, knowing that I'd been right all along. Over time, I had forgotten about my mermaid friend. Until last night. I'd spent all day moving into my new apartment, so I crashed pretty early, and I woke up pretty late. But when I woke up, I remembered a dream that I had about a blonde mermaid. She was screaming and how she was stuck under a rock, and she sobbed and sobbed into the water, and she was so scared and tired, waving one arm out, hoping someone would see her. She looked familiar, so it didn't take long for me to remember that the mermaid that I was seeing when I was young was also her. I'm writing this now because I got to have lunch with my grandmother today. She told me that earlier that week they had found bones in the lagoon outside her house, partially under the big rocks out west. I don't think I ever met a mermaid.
Well, everyone, I'll admit, I don't think it's the best painting I've ever done, but I still really like it, and I hope that you do too. How about those stories, right? Like I said, even if they're fiction, which I'm sure they actually are, even though I'm very much a believer, you know me, I found them to be very entertaining and quite original, as a matter of fact. All right, everyone, so this is our finished mermaid painting. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Conjuring Canvases. It was so lovely to be back. If you like this video, feel free to go ahead and hit that like button, as well as please consider subscribing for more spooky, fun content. And I hope to see you all really, really soon. I have some really excited plans coming up that I'm going to be filming, and I really, really can't wait to share some new spooky stuff with you. I'm going to get all this stuff off my face, but remember the rules of conjuring. Never play alone, never play in a graveyard, and always say goodbye. Goodbye, ghosties and ghoulies.